Good morning. I'm Jean Garrison, and I'm running as a Democrat for House District 45. I wanted to spend a little bit of time with my neighbors this morning to talk about my stance on public lands in public hands and how we can conserve this resource for all of us in the future. I grew up at the base of the Bighorn Mountains in Dayton, Wyoming. I am an active fisherwoman, as there are many in my family. We would also spend summers up in our cabin. Currently, my brother and sister and I do take care of the cabin up in the Bighorns. So I grew up walking out my door and going down to the river to go fishing. Now, in order to do that, I had to ask my neighbors if it was okay to cross their land to get to the river. And so I would ask one neighbor if it would be okay to go fishing, and he would say yes. We would ask another neighbor if it was okay for us to go riding our horses across his land in order to get to the elk pasture, and his answer was yes. This is the way we did it 30 years ago. And in many cases, this is what we still do. We work cooperatively to get access to our joint resources. But things have changed. There are less and less means to have access to public lands in many cases. And so it's really important to recognize that people who represent you should have a very strong stance on this. This is a legacy issue to me. This is something I grew up doing, something I'd like to see members of my family and my neighbors continue to be able to do. I will absolutely be strong on this issue. Another part of it is that there's a very strong link between those of us who use the outdoors and how we have our funding mechanisms set up to preserve our fisheries and our wild game. It is through the license fees and excise taxes paid by anglers and hunters that we fund the Wyoming Game and Fish largely. This is how we have the conservation of our big game. And I think in many cases, people don't realize that link. One of my concerns is that the number of people hunting and fishing is down in the state of Wyoming. This is a little bit different. Women are actually, greater numbers of women are fishing and hunting today, but that means our funding mechanism for our conservation of our wildlife is in jeopardy. So that's something that I would pay attention to very closely. I think that when there are calls for the state to take over public lands, I think that there's a certain idea that the state of Wyoming would be able to do that. Let's keep in mind that we're talking about costs of things like fire suppression. I can't even imagine in great fiscal times that we would want the state of Wyoming to take over control of our public lands. This is something that I do oppose. I have a legacy in my own family of hunting and fishing. I've already said that I do love to go fishing. As a matter of fact, I'm really hoping to go and do that a little bit later today. But in my family, we also hunt. I don't hunt myself. My brother hunts, one of my nieces hunts, and I'm very glad that I'm able to get the elk and the deer and the antelope and share that with folks. So this is something that I want to keep access to for all of us. So for those of us who just like to go out and watch wildlife, remember it's the hunters and the anglers and their funding for Wyoming Game and Fish that makes that possible. Let's keep in mind that we want to maintain these resources for our future. So how we use them is very important. So whether you hike, whether you just go out and do wildlife watching, maybe in the winter you Nordic ski, or perhaps you snowshoe. I enjoyed both of those activities. Or whether you snow machine. We're in this together. Let's work together to preserve our public lands in public hands. Let's work on conservation and recognize that this is something that makes Wyoming great. I hope that I have your support to work for you on this issue as well as others over in Cheyenne starting in November. I very much hope you'll reach out. You can get a hold of me at garrisonforwyoming.com. That's my website. My email is jean@garrisonforwyoming.com, and my phone number is 307-760-9029. Please take a little bit of time. I'd love to visit with you about these issues in greater detail and just to meet you.